Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of SC Academy for season 2025. Today we'll be giving a brief wrap-up post-Vegas as well as a preview of the remaining round 1 games that will be played this weekend, as well as our final team reveal. As I mentioned last week, if you have any questions or hot takes, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Love engaging with you guys and your feedback's greatly appreciated. Today's episode shouldn't drag on as much as last week as we've already discussed most of the relevant players. So strap yourselves in and let's get right into it. Raiders versus Warriors. Raiders 30, Warriors 8. Top scorers Xavier Savage 114, Ethan Strange 89, and Seb Chris on 86. Savage is obviously going to cop that suspension, so he'll be gone a couple of weeks. But he did look very good in that game against the Warriors there, with the Warriors forwards just getting tired early and getting rolled over, and then Savage just weaving his way through the entire pack there. So a couple of notable Supercoach relevant scores. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck 73 looked good, got through a mountain of work, had plenty of runs. I did say last week that I was scared of not owning him. He did cross for a try in that 73, but just the work rate and the uptick there in a pretty disappointing Warriors side was good to see. So 73, great score. Corey Horsburgh, we outlined him last week as a must-have, and he proved us right. 61 there. Just, I think he had like 2 offloads in the first 3 carries or something ridiculous. Got through a stack of work. And then Zach Hosking with a 57. A little bit unlucky not to get a try assist and a line break assist in there, but 57 in round 1, with also spending a little bit of time on the bench when Tarpanay got binned, was good to see. Lowlights, obviously. Luke Metcalf, 12, didn't look very good at all, and it's not so much the score that I was so worried about, it was just how the Warriors halves actually looked out there. But it's not panic stations. I won't be selling straight away this week. We'll have another look in round 2, see how he goes, but not great early signs. Vine Malga, I did have him there for his 16. I haven't played him, so I'm not going to get that score, unlike Metcalf, who I did play. So thank God for the flex, because, well, we hope that Metcalf's 12 will drop off. I did have him there. He didn't get it. He got a handful of minutes. He looked all right while he was out there. Again, it's a little bit more panic stations with Vimalga than it is Metcalf, but yeah, again, we'll just wait and see what the minutes look like in round 2, if he's there at all. I expect him to be there, but we'll just have to wait and see. Charles Nickel Clockstad 30. It's Vegas. It's a smaller field, much the same as KO Weeks, who was actually in a more dominant side, only scored 33. The fullbacks didn't really get a chance to shine on that field, so 30 and 33 were a little bit disappointing for the players, but considering the position and the ground, I think we can accept those scores there. Just a couple of notes on the game as well. As I mentioned, the Raiders forwards absolutely dominated through the middle, and we're absolutely offloading at will. If that continues for the Raiders for the rest of the season, then it looks good for Supercoach. And yeah, as I mentioned, the Warriors halves are just in shambles at the moment, so we'll have to see if Tamari Martin maybe comes back in the squad, Tanner Boyd. But definitely didn't look settled there with Metcalf and Harris Tavita. I actually thought Harris Tavita was the better of the 2 halves, so yeah, it'd be an interesting watch there over the next coming weeks. Moving on to Panthers versus Sharks. Penrith 28, Sharks 22. This was a surprising one for me. I thought the Sharks were really going to exploit that left edge defence of the Panthers and just go right all day. They got a couple of tries down that edge, but they didn't really attack it as hard as I thought they would have. I thought Nico Hines would have been in for a big game. He ended up with 50, and he didn't goal kick, which is obviously definitely something to watch over the next couple of weeks, considering the price tag and what we expect out of Nico Hines. But it was against Penrith, and they turned up. We can't deny the 4-time premiers. They were always going to put in a performance. I don't think I was expecting them to get across the line, but they absolutely proved me wrong. A couple of top scorers in this game. Jesse Ramian, 93. He was one of those players on that edge there that cashed in. Adam Fanua-Blake looked absolutely tremendous on debut. 92, and Isaiah getting a try there and getting a 90 score as well. A couple of other relevant scores. Cleary, 68. Nicker, 66, and Hines, 50, as we touched on. A couple of low lights. Casey McLean got a HIA early in the game and only got a 4. So if you've got him in your team now actually, you could probably look at moving him on. I wouldn't have had him there in the first place. And Ronaldo Mulatalo obviously was on the left edge, so we didn't really expect to see him get a lot of ball, but 28 is pretty disappointing for Ronaldo. He is a pretty volatile player, and centre wing's a volatile position, but yeah, just something to note there. As I touched on, Nico Hines wasn't goal kicking. He had a bit of a groin complaint, but he was kicking the day before in training, so we'll see what that looks like in round 2. Penrith left edge defence held up, and Hines still had more touches than Trindle, so I'm not too worried about Hines on the ball. And I actually had a comment from one of my new subscribers asking about Ramian. If Hines continues to dominate the ball, then I can see Ramian being a buy. I wouldn't do it this week. I'd still wait and watch to see what the Sharks toss up against the Cowboys in round 2 to see how much ball Ramian gets out there. And, if he ends up with a big negative break even coming into round 3, then he could definitely be a buy. Moving on to this week's games. First up, we've got Roosters versus Broncos. Notable inclusions. Marky Mark gets the nod at 3, Robert Toyer at 4, Naf White at 10, and late news, Wong comes in at 13. Nat Butcher is missing that game. Also missing is Billy Smith as well. He's still recovering from that injury, so if you do have him in your squad, get him out. Notable inclusions for the Broncos. Shibasaki gets the nod at 4, Corey Pakes as we expected at 9, Jack Jajeski at 11, and Kobe Hetherington at 13. And notable absences of Ben Takura. And my little prediction there is the Broncos will get up 13 plus. I would even be tempted to go to 19 plus, honestly. But I think the Roosters have a lot to prove, and I don't think they're going to do it this game. Moving on, Tigers versus Knights. Notable inclusions, we got Adam Dewey at the 3, which we expected. A little bit of a surprise inclusion with Fatape at 4. Stafford Toa left out of the squad. Royce Hunt gets the nod at 15, and Jack Bird gets put on the bench at 16. So even with those duels, if he's anywhere near your squad, get him out. I just cannot go there. As I mentioned, notable absences, Stafford Toa and Api Coruscant with that suspension. Notable inclusions for the Knights. Fletcher Sharp, we know he was going to play 6. He's been confirmed there. Phoenix Crossland, as we expected, is going to be the starting 9. And Dylan Lucas, as we suspected, is our starting second rower. Match prediction here. I've gone Knights 1-12. I think the Tigers will come out and put on a little bit of a show. I still think the Knights will get over the line, but I don't think they'll blow them out. If they do happen to blow them out, I do think Kalen Ponga will be a big part of that, which is why he is my vice captain. But yeah, I think the Tigers will turn up and show that they've turned a new page and that it's a new era for the Tigers. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on, Rabbitohs versus Dolphins. This game has been moved now to CommBank because of the cyclone that's happening up around Queensland. So if you are out in Queensland, I hope you're all safe. And my thoughts are with you and your families, and also your homes as well, and your pets, and I hope everyone's okay. Notable inclusions for South, we've got quite a few of them. Campbell Graham comes back in the squad at number 4. Cody Walker's good to go at 6. Jamie Humphries, as we said, with Lewis Dodd suspended, gets the nod at 7. And Jai Arrow comes in at 12. We've also got Lockie Hubner at 13. I do have to apologise while I'm here for this green screen that I've got going on at the moment. We've got a bit of flicker going on. It's early days for the podcast. We're low budget at the moment, and we've got to get some lighting sorted to get this flicker sorted. But if you could actually see behind me, you would be able to see that I've got Lockie Hubner there at 13, which is the biggest nod, which we predicted last week in our round 1 preview. So good to see that come true. Notable absences, obviously, we know about Mitchell and Murray not being there. Notable inclusions for the Dolphins. Late change. Sean O'Sullivan comes in at 6, Finafuiaki at 11, Maxi Plath at 12, and Tom Gilbert is starting at 13. Notable absence there. Nikorima, he's staying home with his pregnant wife during the cyclone, which is completely understandable, and Jack Bostock is missing for a couple of weeks as well. As I mentioned last week, I am South supporter, so it could be a little bit biased. I think we get the job done 1-12. I don't have real high hopes for us this season, but I don't really have high hopes for the Dolphins either. I think being at a neutral ground tips it a little bit more in the favour of South than it previously was the Dolphins, and with the inclusions that South have got back now, I can see them winning a tight game. Moving on, Dragons and Bulldogs. Dragons notable inclusions. Matt Feagai comes in at 2, Tuapoloto at 5, Emre Gula starts at 10. A couple of absences there in Sloan, who is he's listed on the extended bench but named to play New South Wales Cup. But Finau, who we had down as a cheapie, is missing because of that head knock that he copped in the Charity Shield, but he is not named at in New South Wales Cup, so it's probably a good sign for his job security that he's not named in New South Wales Cup. And then for the Bulldogs, Tupanua starts his first game for the Bulldogs at 15, and they are missing Josh Curran. My prediction there is Bulldogs 1-12. Seagulls versus Cowboys. Notable inclusions. Lehigh Hopewade, as we thought, gets the 5. Jazz Tavanga starts for the first time for the Seagulls at 9, and Takiaho at 10. Notable absences, Croker, and surprising Josh Alloway, who played a bunch of games for the Eagles last season. He only missed, I think, about 3 games or something like that. He's been named in the very much extended bench. I think he's in like jersey 22 or something like that. Be interesting to see if he's a late change and comes into the bench, but at the moment he's been left out of the squad, which is quite a surprise. Then we go on to the Cowboys. Notable inclusions. We predicted them last week. Jackson Purdue gets the nod at 3 and Duffy at 7. Notable absences. Tamalolo is still coming back from an injury. He's again on the very much extended bench. One of the last names there. Could be a late change and come into the squad, but we'll have to wait and see. My prediction there, Seagulls 13+. I think they should run rampant over a defensively weak Cowboys outfit, especially at 4 Pines Park. The only thing that worries me is the weather, and we'd be having to wait and see if the Seagulls can play that expansive style of football to get around the Cowboys and score points. But I think they should do a good job and do it comfortably. Moving on to Storm versus Eels. Storm notable inclusions. Ryan Pappenhausen, he's good to go at 1. Cameron Munster, as we expected, is good to go at 6. And Jerome Hughes, he's all good with that neck complaint and comes in at 7, so they have their whole spine. Eels notable inclusions, there's quite a few here. Isaiah Yongi, as we expected, gets the nod at 1. Jake Tago at 5. Ronald Volkman comes in at 7. Brendan Hands at 9. Riley Smith at 14. And Charlie Geimer at 17. For me, with the inclusion of Riley Smith there at 14, that puts a line through Brendan Hands for most Supercoach owners, myself included. I feel like Brendan Hands has to play 80 minutes to be a viable Supercoach option. So for me, he should be gone from most squads if they're in the first place. And then notable absences for the Eels. Mitch Moses, still no good with that foot complaint. Still looks a couple of weeks off, which isn't the greatest news for Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown likes to be that secondary option in the Eels halves combination, so we'll have to wait and see what that looks like for Dylan Brown's output. Also, Bailey Simonson still returning from injury, as well as Sean Lane is still on the sidelines while Addo Carr is suspended. My match prediction here, I think the Storm should roll the Eels and roll them easy. With a full-strength Storm squad with one change from the grand final, I really can't see the Eels being much of a threat here, and I've got the Storm 13+. Finally, moving on to our post-Vegas team changes. I've had to change the team around a little bit with a couple of the outs, those being Takura and Toa. Although I thought they were going to be quick fixes and easily replaceable, I did have to make quite a few changes to get the team that I wanted for round 1, just because of the money that I had left over in the first place. I didn't have a whole lot there. So I've actually taken Pete Mamazelis out. I know I upped him last week, saying that he was an 0.9 ppm guy, and that with Humphries probably getting the nod at 7 in round 1, which he now has, it would mean an uptick in minutes for especially round 1. I just couldn't justify the extra 70k for him over Pakes. I've had to make these changes, so it was more of a money decision more than anything. And I thought, coming into preseason, I wasn't high on Mamazelis. It was only until I really looked at his numbers and realised his PPM that he would be a handy pickup. I would still be higher on him if I had the money to do so. I would still be starting with Pete Mamazelis over Corey Pakes, but with the changes that I wanted to make, it was the most viable one that didn't impact my team too hard. So Pete Mamazelis is out. Ben Takura is out now that he hasn't been named. Lehigh Hopewade is another one that I've pulled out of the squad. Again, this is just more of a money thing. You want to fit every player in, but also I don't hate the decision either, because I do already have Turbo there and I do already have Garrick there. Could I really cop another Manly player? I don't know. So I've decided to take him out, and Toa not being named comes out of the squad. As I mentioned, in comes Corey Pakes. I've actually brought in Kobe Hetherington to the second row forward position to replace Ben Takura. Obviously, that was a lot more money than Ben Takura was, and I've moved Tino up to FRF, which is why I've had to save a little bit of money. I've actually brought in Campbell Graham for Lehigh Hopewade, who all pre-season was being touted as probably one of the most owned players of the season at the moment. I mean, I'm sure it'll update, but it's something ridiculous, like 3% or something like that. For me, at that price, although on that South's right edge, which is their weaker side, I feel like he's close to a must-have at that point. At that price. We know what he can climb up to, and we know what he's capable of. And before he got injured, he was a shoe-in for Origin. So I've brought Campbell Graham in early. I might be jumping the gun a little bit. I feel like you can afford to wait and see, but for me, he's coming straight into my squad. I've also brought in Jesse Arthurs. I don't love it. I actually will be playing him round 1. I've owned Jesse Arthurs a couple of times over the years. He's not a real high upside. He's reasonable upside if he scores tries, but he just does not have that base to back it up, and he's a bit of an up and down player. I don't love it, but with the amount of selections that there are, I think he's kind of the best option I've got. So he comes into my squad. So quickly run through the full round 1 squad. At starting hooker, we've got Sandon Smith, and then Corey Pakes is my non-playing reserve. Front row forward, Terrell May, Corey Horsburgh, and then in my non-playing reserves, we have Tino and Royce Hunt. In the second row, Dylan Lucas, Zach Hosking, Naf White, Kobe Hetherington, as I mentioned, who I am actually going to play this week, Vaimunga, who was my non-playing reserve, and Lockie Hubner, who I had in there last week, stays in. Although he's named to start, I'll wait and see how many minutes he gets and what his output is before I play him. I was tossing up whether or not to play him or Hetherington, but he's currently one of my non-playing reserves. At halfback, we've already locked him in last week. We had Nathan Cleary and Nico Hines as my reserve. 5'8", Luke Metcalf, and then Dylan Brown as my reserve. At centre wing, we've got Ruben Garrick, Greg Marzu, Campbell Graham, Jesse Arthurs, and then 3 non-playing reserves in Jackson Purdue, Shibasaki, and Robert Toya. Then moving on to fullback, we've got Tom Travojevic, who I've captained, Isaiah Yongi as my reserve, and then in my flex, Kalen Ponga, who I have VC'd. I don't actually expect to use the VC loophole this week, considering Metcalf's pathetic score. I don't really feel like I can afford to take that, but we'll see if Ponga, tosses up maybe 180 or 190 or something like that, then might force my hand. In the end, we've got $24,900 left over. So yeah, thank you for joining me again for episode 2. It was a very short one here, as it was more just a part 2 from last week's episode. As I mentioned, we do have to get this flickering sorted. It is doing my head in. Hopefully we can see a bit of an uptick in production quality as well. But again, thank you for joining me. If again you've got any questions, comments, hot takes, whatever it may be, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to stay posted for our weekly posts. Thanks again, and we'll see you again next week.